For many years, people were terrified by the stories of a farmhouse in Rhode Island. It was a place where quiet whispers turned into loud screams, and strange, invisible forces disturbed the peace of a family who once lived there. This house became famous as the Conjuring House. Paranormal investigators tried to uncover its secrets, and later, Hollywood turned its story into a movie filled with horror. But behind all the legends and scary tales, something even darker was hiding, something that didn't fit neatly into a ghost story. Finally, the truth behind the house has started to come out. And surprisingly, the real story is even more disturbing than anyone imagined. It's not just about ghosts or strange sounds. It's about deep emotional pain, broken lives, and something that may still be there. The haunting didn't simply stop. It changed, took on new forms. And perhaps the scariest part is this: the true horror may not have been supernatural at all. Long before the house became known around the world, the land it stood on had already been marked by sadness and death. This property, known as the Old Arnold Estate in Harrisville, Rhode Island, was built around the year 1736. It had stood quietly for centuries, silently witnessing many tragic events. Records show that several people died on or near the land. There were hangings, drownings, a poisoning, and 4 men who were said to have frozen to death. One especially shocking case involved an elderly woman, Mrs. John Arnold, who is believed to have hanged herself in the barn at the age of 93. These real-life tragedies created a heavy, dark feeling around the property. Some people began to think that the land itself might be cursed. The house was passed down through 8 generations of the Arnold family, so it had deep roots in the area. But the stories connected to it didn't all come from historical documents. Many of the most chilling tales were passed down by word of mouth, through generations of storytelling. Over time, these stories changed. Some were exaggerated, others were misunderstood. As the years went by, the line between what really happened and what was imagined became blurry. Some people believe that all the bad events were just unfortunate coincidences. But for those who believe in ghosts and the supernatural, the many similar stories over the years seem too consistent to ignore. One of the most well-known stories is about a girl named Prudence Arnold, who was just 11 years old when she was said to have been attacked and killed by a farm worker. Although a terrible crime like that did happen, it didn't happen at the Arnold Estate. It actually took place in a nearby town called Uxbridge, Massachusetts. Still, people kept linking the crime to the farmhouse, and over time, the false connection became part of the legend. This shows how stories can easily become attached to places with a spooky reputation, even if the facts don't match. Another name tied to the house is Bathsheba Sherman. She lived in the 1800s and was accused by her community of practicing witchcraft and even killing her own baby as a sacrifice. There was no real proof of these claims, and she never had a trial. In fact, she didn't even live on the Arnold Estate, just nearby. But rumors spread, and years later, the Conjuring movie made her name famous again. Her story turned into one of the main legends of the haunted house, even though most of it is based on fear, not facts. It's a perfect example of how real tragedies and local gossip can grow into terrifying folklore, especially in a place already full of sorrow and mystery. Then, in January 1971, a new chapter began. Roger and Carolyn Perron moved into the house with their 5 daughters. They were looking for a peaceful place to live and were drawn to the old farmhouse because of its historic charm and large yard, about 8.5 acres. The house had 14 rooms and an old-fashioned look they found beautiful. At first, it felt like a dream come true. But very soon, strange things began to happen. It started with small, odd events. Items would go missing and show up in strange places. Carolyn often found her broom in a different spot than she had left it, and small piles of dirt appeared in rooms she had just cleaned. These things weren't scary at first, but they were unsettling. The family tried to explain them away. Maybe they forgot where they put things, or maybe the house was just old. But these explanations didn't hold up for long, because the strange events kept happening and got harder to ignore. Even their dog, named Brevard, began acting differently. He became angry and growled at empty corners of the house. He refused to enter certain rooms, especially near the cellar. Animals are known to have sharp senses, and the dog's fear made the family even more uneasy. His behavior was not normal and made them believe that something in the house was watching them. As time went on, things got worse. The children whispered about hearing voices and seeing moving shadows. Their toys seemed to move on their own. Andrea, the oldest daughter, said she felt a strange weight in the air at night, like something invisible was wrapping around her. Doors opened by themselves. Footsteps were heard in empty hallways. The once lovely home started to feel heavy, dark, and scary. What they first thought were just odd little things turned out to be signs of something much bigger, something that would change their lives forever. The Perrons were no longer just living in an old house. They were now part of its dark and painful story. In the first few weeks after the Perron family moved into the Old Arnold Estate, things didn't seem frightening at all. In fact, the family felt something gentle in the house, something almost kind. At first, it felt like they were not alone, but that wasn't scary. The 5 daughters, Andrea, Nancy, Christine, Cindy, and April, began to talk about invisible presences in the house. They described these as quiet, caring figures who seemed to watch over them, especially the children. These spirits didn't cause harm. They seemed more like friendly caretakers, silently living alongside the family. Objects in the house would be moved, but not thrown or broken. It was as if someone had simply placed them elsewhere, like part of a routine or even a game. Doors opened slowly on their own, and soft whispers could be heard in empty rooms, not angry or threatening, but curious. One of the younger daughters, Cindy, often said she felt like someone was gently tucking her into bed at night. At first, she believed it was her mother. But later, she noticed a strange smell in the air, something sweet and floral, unlike anything her family used. Andrea, the oldest sister, later said that these spirits seemed to act out of habit or affection. One spirit, in particular, was said to give the children goodnight kisses and fix their blankets, almost like a loving nursemaid who had once cared for children in that very home. These peaceful and strange moments made the Perrons feel oddly comfortable in the house, even with its old, creaky floors and dark corners. They started to believe they were simply sharing the house with the memories, or perhaps the spirits, of people who had once lived there. The girls even talked about the spirits like they were part of the family. The strange events, such as toys disappearing and reappearing or doors moving on their own, became normal. It was no longer scary, it was just how the house was. Life began to feel strangely balanced, like they had all adapted to living with the supernatural. But this feeling of peace was only temporary. The comforting presence of these gentle spirits was covering something darker underneath. And that false sense of safety may have been the most dangerous part of all. Over time, the warmth faded. The once friendly presences either disappeared or were pushed away by something colder, something more disturbing. Andrea would later suggest that these kind spirits had been overpowered by something much more threatening. What had once felt like a peaceful coexistence with the past quickly turned into a serious threat. The Perrons began to realize that the calm had just been the beginning, a quiet warning before a terrifying storm. The house was changing, and what lay ahead was far worse than anything they could have imagined. One of the most chilling experiences came from young Cindy Perron. As the family was already dealing with growing fear, Cindy made a shocking confession to her older sister Andrea. She said she had heard voices, clear whispers that repeated the same sentence over and over. 7 dead soldiers are buried in the walls. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't something vague or confusing. It was specific, haunting, and unforgettable. This statement felt very different from all the other strange things that had happened. It didn't feel playful. It felt serious, like a message that demanded to be heard. The thought that human remains might be hidden inside the very walls of their home changed the way the family saw everything. Cindy, who was already sensitive to the odd events around her, became deeply affected. She started to pull away from her family, becoming quiet, nervous, and scared. At night, she stayed awake, imagining skeletons hidden just beyond the walls, watching her. Her fear began to spread to her sisters, who saw how shaken she had become. Her parents tried to comfort her, but even they couldn't ignore the growing fear. What if Cindy had heard something real? What if the past was buried not just in stories, but in the walls around them? No bones were ever found, and no evidence confirmed the story about the 7 soldiers. There were no records or signs in the structure of the house to support it. But the power of the story didn't come from proof. It came from the emotional impact it had. That sentence, 7 dead soldiers are buried in the walls, stayed with the family forever. It became one of the most unforgettable parts of their time in the house. Later on, paranormal investigators and storytellers added this to the growing legend of the Conjuring House. Even people who don't believe in ghosts agree that Cindy's statement had a powerful psychological effect. It didn't need to be literally true to matter. It felt real to those who lived through it. And in a place like Rhode Island, with its long colonial history and past wars, it wasn't hard to believe. The story felt just close enough to reality to be terrifying. To this day, people still wonder, could the spirits of forgotten soldiers be buried somewhere in or around the house? Could their unrest be the reason the shadows linger? No bones have ever been found, but the whisper still echoes, faint but impossible to forget. Bathsheba Sherman, born Bathsheba Thayer in 1812, has become one of the most widely misunderstood figures connected to the legend of the Conjuring House. Her name is now strongly associated with evil, mainly because of how she was portrayed in the 2013 movie The Conjuring. In the film, she was shown as a cruel witch who sacrificed her baby to Satan and cursed the land before ending her own life. But that frightening version of her story mostly comes from myths, exaggerated tales, and Hollywood's imagination, not from actual history. In real life, Bathsheba was a farmer's wife in 19th century Rhode Island. She lived near the Old Arnold Estate, but not on it. Rumors about her being a witch and killing children began while she was still alive, especially after a tragic incident involving a baby who died under her care. According to the story passed down through the years, the infant had a puncture wound at the base of the skull, which led to talk that Bathsheba had used a sewing needle in some kind of dark ritual. These suspicions spread quickly in the small, religious, and highly superstitious community. Even though no official charges were ever made against her, many people began to fear and avoid her. After her death in 1885, the rumors only grew worse. Stories about her became more twisted and frightening as they were retold, often mixing fact with fantasy. But in truth, Bathsheba's life was not much different from that of many other women at the time. She married a man named Judson Sherman and had several children, though sadly, not all survived past infancy, a common tragedy in the 1800s. There is no real evidence that she practiced witchcraft, worshipped the devil, or harmed anyone. Most of the terrible things said about her started after she died and were based on fear, not proof. Over time, people added to her story, letting superstition and fear turn her into a villain. Eventually, the version of her life told in The Conjuring became more popular than the real story. In the movie, Bathsheba is shown more as a symbol of evil than as a real person. That version helped create a terrifying movie, but it was deeply unfair to the actual woman, who likely suffered from rumors and isolation. Historians and local researchers have worked hard to correct these false ideas, especially the claim that she lived or died at the Arnold Estate. There's no strong evidence for that connection. Still, when it comes to ghost stories, people often choose fear over facts. Bathsheba's legend continues to grow because it fits perfectly into the eerie atmosphere surrounding the house. The true details of her life have been mostly forgotten, replaced by a darker, more dramatic version. To this day, her name sends a chill down the spine, even though the real Bathsheba was likely more a victim of gossip than a true source of evil. Despite the facts, Carolyn Perron, the mother of the Perron family, came to believe that Bathsheba's spirit was haunting their home, and her personally. As the paranormal activity at the Old Arnold Estate became more serious, Carolyn's experiences turned deeply personal and terrifying. What started as minor disturbances, like objects going missing or cold breezes, soon became something much more disturbing. Carolyn often woke up with bruises on her body that she couldn't explain. Some were in places she couldn't have reached herself, and they appeared even though she hadn't hurt herself during the night. Her energy began to drain quickly. She felt tired all the time, and she complained of a strong feeling that she was being watched, especially in her bedroom and near the cellar. As time passed, Carolyn's health and mood continued to decline. Her family noticed the change. She was no longer the strong, steady mother they knew. Instead, she became anxious, withdrawn, and frequently upset. The most terrifying part of her experience, however, was the appearance of a ghostly woman she said visited her at night. This spirit would appear by her bedside, staring at her with hatred and whispering threats. Carolyn was certain this entity was not just haunting the house, it was focused on her. Some believed that this spirit was Bathsheba Sherman. The way it acted, full of anger and menace, convinced Carolyn that this was no random ghost, but something darker with a purpose. These nighttime visits became more frightening over time. The spirit seemed to grow stronger, more violent, and more determined. Carolyn feared for her safety and her sanity. While the rest of the family also experienced strange things, what Carolyn went through seemed much more intense. She was being targeted. The haunting didn't just affect her, it seemed to be attacking her, feeding off her fear, her exhaustion, and her emotional pain. The toll it took on Carolyn was clear to those around her.